Well, what's the anti-immigration president going to make of this latest news? Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, President Trump has another potential embarrassment on the horizon when it comes to his anti-immigration status, which is well known and opposed not only on the Democratic left, but by people around the world. A new report suggests that the crackdown that the Trump administration has been doling out on immigrants has caused the government to process more asylum seeker petitions than in any of the last 4 years, including a 61% increase. And even though refugee interviews are down, there are more new citizens coming into the country. Bill, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the headline of this story. It looks like just the opposite of what Trump's opponents would say is actually happening, that the Trump administration has increased the number of naturalized foreigners coming to this country.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around, isn't there? People basically misrepresenting what the president says and especially what he does. I don't know. This is certainly my position, and it's the position of every conservative that I personally know. This anti-immigration slander that's been leveled at Republicans, at conservatives, and at Donald Trump especially, is just that. It's slandered. I don't know anybody who's anti-immigration. I know virtually everybody I know is anti-illegal immigration. And when you said something like that, my first kind of knee-jerk reaction was, oh, great, more refugees. But I realized that, no, this is not the problem. The problem is, or was anyway, people who basically claim refugee status as they are illegally crossing into the country. As you said, these people are interviewed and put through some kind of screening procedure. I think that Donald Trump has shown earlier that he's not a big fan of allowing immigration from countries who are just, by and large, pretty much dead set against us and everything we believe in. So it seems to me that the salient point here is that the man who hates blacks so much has produced the lowest black unemployment in living memory. The man who hates women so much has produced the lowest women's unemployment in living history. The man who hates, jobs so much, being such a greedy tycoon and so on, has produced the biggest economic growth we've seen in forever. And now it turns out that the biggest xenophobe of all time is actually doing what most people that I know of would like to see done. That is not to completely say nobody else gets into this country, but to secure the borders against criminals and illegal aliens and make sure that the people that do come into the country extend the same common courtesy, if nothing else, of standing in line and waiting to do this the right way. I've said this so many times, if you are a refugee from some other country in the world, you are running from either political corruption, economic corruption, or both. But what you're running away from, sensibly enough, is lack of the rule of law. And if the first thing you do, if you come to America because we have both political and economic rule of law, despite attempts at some high levels, then the first thing you do by entering this country is break the law. You're essentially bringing with you what you've been trying to escape from. And I don't want to see that, and I know a lot of Americans don't want to see that either.
So, Bill, don't you think this is going to offend some of Trump's biggest supporters when they find out that Homeland Security has reached a 5-year high in approvals of citizenship applications? They swore in more people as naturalized citizens. And when you take all the different kinds of programs, from humanitarian type programs, asylum, refugees, crime victim visas, temporary protected status, the numbers were 32% higher. In other words, 32% more people being processed in 2018 than in 2017. Do you think this is going to really hurt Trump's base and maybe they'll turn against him in 2020?
I asked you to stop in the middle. I'm glad you didn't, because sometimes I just tell you to do that. But I wanted to stop you right when you said sworn in. That to me is the operational distinction about what Donald Trump is doing versus what we saw with not just Obama, but so many administrations going back to Reagan. When you say that more and more people are being sworn in, that means that there are more legal immigrants into the country being either granted permanent resident status or becoming naturalized citizens. And these people, once they become citizens, once they're sworn in, raise their hand and swear to protect the Constitution of the United States, they're more Americans than many, 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 many professors that I know of in colleges around this country who've been here for 7 generations. And so what you're saying there is going to determine whether or not this anti-immigration slander is true. I have no doubt whatsoever, given how heated things have become and people becoming so sick of illegal immigration over so many years, just so tired of it, being told that we have to accept, these Syrian refugees and watching what happened in Europe and the destruction of those cultures. I suspect that, needless to say, there'll be a number of people who are going to react to this somewhat negatively, but I don't think that is going to be most of them. In fact, I suspect that's going to be a very small percentage. The people that I know and the people that I want to know are people who believe that this is a land of immigrants, and their only bone of contention with this has been that it is not an illegal activity, and it's not something that should be tolerated simply because you walk across the border, often in the company of guys with machine guns bringing in narcotics and rapists and murderers and all the rest. Not exclusively those people, needless to say, but they're not exactly doing a thorough screening, the coyotes, when they're bringing people over the southern border. So to say that Donald Trump has increased the number of legal immigrants to this country makes me happy. I would like to see the quota system a little more balanced. I noticed that before Senator Kennedy changed that bill, I want to say it was back in 1986, not sure about the date. But if you look at immigration to the United States prior to that, 9 out of the 10 or 10 out of the 10 top countries in terms of where people are coming from were first world countries, developed countries. And I've looked at it for the last 2 decades. And 9 out of 10 countries, in terms of the number of people coming into America, are coming from third world countries. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't allow any third world countries into the immigrants into the country if they show merit and desire and hard work and all the rest of it. That's great. They're welcome here. But we shouldn't be exclusively admitting third world immigrants to an information age society whose educational system has already been so completely sacked that and these social assistance programs become so unbelievably expensive that it doesn't strike me that a person who wants to work hard from one country is any morally superior than a person who wants to work from another country just because the country they're coming from is in worse shape.
Well, Bill, it strikes me as curious that so many conservatives speak positively of any kind of a quota system. After all, if you're for free markets, how could you not be for the free movement of labor, which is part of the market system, obviously, across our borders? Are you saying that just if we have to have quotas, they shouldn't all be from these particular third world countries? Or are you actually endorsing the idea that quotas are a great idea and the federal government should pick winners and losers at that level?
I'm not endorsing either of those ideas. As most progressives are, you being, of course, the faux progressive, the sheep in wolf's clothing, are conflating politics and economics. I don't have any problem with the number of barrels of oil or drills, power drills that we import into the country, because they don't get to vote for who's going to be setting the taxes, and imported automobiles don't get to tell me whether or not I'm going to live a life of being taxed to death, or whether I'm going to be able to have enough keep enough of the money that we earn to go out and grow and do some more of it. So to say that people, that labor are simply another one of the economic equations, first of all, is a pretty anti-human, not just pretty, it's an exceedingly anti-human position to take regardless of who's going where. These are not parts and widgets, they're actual people, number one. But number two, in terms of the impact of the argument politically, I can import 10 million bushels of grain, that doesn't mean I've imported 10 million votes for the Democratic Party from bushels of grain that did not grow up here in America.
Well, I don't see you standing at the California line trying to stop all those liberal Democrats from moving to Texas, and we've received quite an influx here in Texas. What's the difference between allowing the free flow of labor across state borders within the United States, with political differences that you just highlighted, and allowing people from other countries who might have political disagreements with you to move in?
You've just expressed the difference by definition. It's like saying, what's the difference between one species and another species? Well, the definition of a species is that it is not able to interbreed with another species. That's what defines a species, as opposed to subsets and offsprings and mules and all the rest of these ligers that can occasionally interbreed. The definition of a species is that it is not able to interbreed with another species. And so when you say, what's the difference between illegal aliens coming over the border from Mexico versus Californians going into the border of Texas, the difference is that the Californians going into Texas are, and I'm speaking technically here from a strictly legal point of view, citizens of the United States of America. In many, many, many cases, they're emotionally not, but nevertheless legal. Their legal status is they're American citizens. And my one of the two encounters I've had in my professional life with just unbridled hatred was when I basically advised the citizens of Texas that if they saw people coming in from the west on Interstate 10 with California tags, show them a good Texas welcome, a nice time, escort them all the way out to Beaumont, make sure they get into Louisiana. And if they start looking for residential property, just open fire and don't ask any questions. They're going to take your state away from you. Now, some people seem to think that I meant that seriously. And since I drive around with California tags on my car, I find that a little hard to credit. I think it's another one of those examples where anybody could jump on the rhetoric of hyperbole in order to get their hair set on fire. But the fundamental argument I'm making is being made with hyperbole, in other words, exaggerated to a ridiculous degree, because Californians exporting their liberal policies is an exceedingly large threat to the survival of the Union. If Californians vote for laws that make California unlivable, and then they decide to move to Texas because Texas has no taxes or low taxes and is very livable, and the first thing they do when they get to Texas is start voting Texas into California, this is a first-order problem. And because they're American citizens, they are protected by the rights that other American citizens have. I should say their rights are not able to be taken away from them by the power of the government, as they are in other places, if you really want to be precisely correct about it. And so the big difference there is legal status. And I don't so much want to take Texas out of the Union as much as I'd like to take California out of the Union. You could probably go with Oregon too, and Washington State is probably a 50-50 affair.
Well, I suppose, Bill, that the bigotry of the Trump administration is most clear in the fact that while they can celebrate, we have more citizens, we have more citizenship applications being approved, we have more asylum seekers and refugees and people on various kinds of humanitarian status conditions coming into the country. The reality is we only want those people who do things the way we want them to do them. And we're not willing to accept the people who come over here and say, I really don't know that I want to stay in the United States for a long time. I'd like to do some work here and maybe go back home if I please. I really don't want to be part of your oppressive taxation system. Why shouldn't I be allowed to just come in, do a job, make some money, send it home, and go back?
There's absolutely no reason why you can't do that. I know a number of people that do that, but they do it legally. We know who they are, where they've come from. We know what their background is. We know where they're going.
Well, see, that's the invasive nature of government right there.
This is called the guest worker program. And again, we're at the root issue here of the entire debate. The debate is not about things like people who want to come and work in America for 2 or 3 years or go to college here for 2 or 3 years. That's not the point. It's never been the point, ever been the point. The point has always been whether or not these people are going through a legal process in order to be here. And furthermore, they are going through a legal process that makes it at least likely that they are not going to be another drain on the social services of this country, which are so badly run and so expensive that our social welfare system is, what is it now? It's when you throw in all of it, entitlements, it's certainly $1 trillion. It's probably more than that. It's $1,000 billion every year taken from people who pay a lot of taxes and given to people who pay no taxes. And this is another outrage and injustice that the American people have had enough of. It's not directly one-to-one correlation with illegal immigration, but illegal immigration is a perfectly grand example of paying for something that we have no business paying for, that it is not our obligation or right to pay out of our pockets for the well-being of everybody else on planet Earth, no matter where they come from, and most especially whether or not they come through customs or whether they come over the border, climbing over a fence. There's a big difference, Scott, between being invited into somebody's house for a party and jumping over their fence to go into their house through a window in the middle of the night. And if you can't tell what that difference is, then chances are you're as morally confused as the average progressive is, who's simply not able to determine the simple basics of things like there's a difference between an invited guest and a not. And I can sum up my position on this in terms of the whole world, third world thing and everything very clearly. I fervently believe in the motto on the base of the Statue of Liberty. I fervently believe in give us your poor, your huddled masses learning to breathe free. But I don't believe it says give us only your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. I don't think that qualification to come into the country should be predicated on just exactly how poor and huddled you are, with the poorest and most huddled people being moved to the front of the line. I don't think that's what the statute represents. I don't think it's what the entire ethics of immigration represents. I think we have a perfect right to say, yes, if you want to come to this country, these are our laws, these are our rules, this is our language. And if you want to become part of this experiment in democracy, and if you want to become part of this idea of America as it's defined historically, then welcome. If not, piss off.
Well, one final question, and we'll have to keep it brief here. But Bill, if you're the White House Communication Office or the communication shop at the RNC, what do you do with this information that says that we are approving more asylum requests, that we are swearing in more new citizens, that we are approving through the Homeland Security Department more citizenship applications? What do you do with that?
I trumpet it from the highest mountains. And I make sure that when I make this announcement, I make sure that I phrase it in such a way that is crystal clear to the people who have rightfully, honestly, without prejudice or racism or anything, been against illegal entry into this country. I would phrase it so that it is crystal clear that the number of immigrants increasing is the number of legal immigrants increasing, and the total number of immigrants, if you were to really get serious about the border wall, would go down significantly, because while we're letting in more legal immigrants who are here either on a student visa or on a tourist visa, or they're on a work visa, or they're here to stay, and we've got them registered, we know who they are, and they're going to take an oath to defend the United States of America because they want to live here. These are the people we want. And I would go out there and I would trumpet it from the rooftops, because it is once again like this record low unemployment for Black Americans. It is an actual result rather than what the left says is true, and is not only not true, it's anti-true.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, 5 days a week, Bill Whittle brings you his opinion on the breaking news of the day, anchored in principles that you have long held. The members at BillWhittle.com make this show possible. They actually contribute voluntarily from their own means to produce and distribute these shows, and we're grateful to them. If you haven't yet experienced what it's like to be a member at BillWhittle.com, I invite you to do so. Even if you sign up for a month just to check it out, I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy our highly interactive, member-exclusive website at BillWhittle.com.
It's a real family.
Yes, it is. And if you'd like to be part of that, just go to that website, BillWhittle.com, and click the Become a Member link. So for Bill and myself, Scott Ott, thank you to the members for making this happen.